Alrighty. It is Friday, June 13th, 2025. Starting a little late because I had a bunch of things I wanted to ask Dr. Eleanor about, and we're just gonna get started. Good morning.
Good morning, good afternoon,
Good
good day.
afternoon. Good day. You wanted to talk about the full moon and what's going on in the world, so why don't we just start right from there?
Well, last week I discussed the full moon of June 11th, and we talked about the power of it and the fact that the issue it was focusing on from a cosmic level is the 27th path of intelligence on the tree of life, which is truth versus belief. And we had a attack last night from Israel to Iran, and it was very well planned, obviously, and it took out very targeted um, targets. And what they took out were all of the nuclear facilities and the generals and the scientists who were capable of using the nuclear weapons. And according to Bibi Netanyahu, Israel was days away, just days away from having a nuclear weapon that they were going to use on Israel.
Oh, Iran was okay. Mm,
So it was a very targeted attack, but it's an indicator to me of the operation of the cosmic elements that are much bigger than any individual or any interpretation we could give to what's afoot.
mhm.
And in my view, we're living in biblical times, and the energies that are circling around us are not of an ordinary nature.
Mhm.
And I would urge all of the listeners to keep yourself safe. Do not take risks over the next 3 months that are unnecessary risks. Um, I would stay closer to home,
Mm,
and be prepared for the unexpected.
mhm.
I would think that there's going to be major disclosure. And what we are seeing, in my view, is that the corruption on a worldwide scale is being recognized in a different way by many people.
Mhm.
And there are many people who still are in denial
Mhm.
as to what on the world scene has been orchestrated. Human beings, one to one, don't hate each other. And as Bibi said, and as President Trump says, and many other people are saying, the wars are being created by people in power, and the populations involved are victims.
Mhm.
And what Bibi made a point to say in his speech last night was this was a very targeted attack to take out a danger that was imminent in the world of nuclear arsenals. And if those were used the world would be gone as we know it. And so he said, this is not against the Iranian people. This is against the nuclear proliferation and purely that, and the people who want nuclear war.
Hmm.
So I think it was a move toward peace, not toward war. And I think it is sort of mind-boggling that it happened on the full moon. And
Mind-boggling or expected, or
well,
anticipated.
when we look at the astrological and cosmic energies, um, we can always find an explanation after the fact.
Mhm.
But what was striking to me was what I said in the podcast last week, which was expect to have the balance between truth and illusion be made visible.
Mhm.
And that's what's happening. So I encourage everyone listening to take very seriously where you are in your life, what rings true to you, what does not ring true to you, and where you have doubt. Where you have doubt is where you're not clear.
Mhm.
So find your truth and start living it.
Mhm. Uh, I didn't really even know about the attack at all, except I was standing behind my father giving him Reiki, overlooking his shoulder, and he's of course on news sites and getting rattled. And it just flashed by, and so I just saw Israel Iran attack, and because that's always a headline, it seems. At the time, I thought nothing of it, and then when you mentioned this morning, it was like, oh, okay,
No,
coordinated.
this was very major. I mean, it was about 9 at night, I think,
Hmm.
here in Eastern time. And of course, my grandson is in Israel.
Hmm.
So he immediately texted us um, and alerted us that this was a major attack and they were going after the nuclear facilities and the generals and the scientists.
So they
And,
couldn't record me. Yeah.
and it was targeted, and it was so targeted that they put explosives in apartment buildings and only took out the apartment where the generals were sleeping.
So extreme precision. Yeah.
Very precision, extreme precision. And, um, you know, the Iranians had been given 2 months, 60 days to negotiate and to get rid of their nuclear proliferation, which had been forbidden.
Hmm.
They were in contempt of the agreement. And so um, the US was not involved in the attack. It was purely Israel who did what they needed to do to save themselves.
So,
And it um, they are expecting a counterattack.
um, yeah, and a place that's lost a bunch of generals, that'll be difficult to do, but also the wrong people may not be experienced in doing said things and all that.
Well,
Um,
Israel does have the Iron Dome.
I don't know what that is.
You don't know what the Iron Dome is?
There's lots of things I don't know yet. Tell me.
Israel has it's what Ronald Reagan had suggested and President Trump is going to implement, which is a shield around your country that um, repels anything that attempts to get through. So Israel has a dome around it. And when Iran, after October 7th, had used drones, major drone attack, none of them got through.
So it's not physically an iron dome, it's some sort of energetic or interference kind of thing for
I don't know the technical aspects of it, but
interesting. Well, so where I think this conversation may go, because you've talked about it in the past, is, sort of alien interference and getting involved. And this does make me think of something that I've just been wanting to ask you this whole time. Are you familiar with the Foo Fighters or the term Foo Fighter? So,
no.
Foo Fighters is a massive rock band. However, that doesn't matter. The band was named, so the drummer, Dave Grohl, was in a band called Nirvana, which was one of the biggest bands in the 90s. And
Mhm.
then the lead singer committed suicide, and Dave was in a depression and wrote a bunch of songs, but didn't feel like he could release them under his own name because he'd be under heavy scrutiny. So he created a band called the Foo Fighters. And the Foo Fighters, the whole idea was it was just such a ridiculous name. But, anyway, the Foo Fighters, it turns out, was during World War II, in the bombings over, I guess, Paris and London,
Mhm.
uh, the bombers would, on both sides, so English or like the Allies and the Germans, were reporting that while the planes were flying over these bomb sites, a some sort of crazy shooting white light would go through the plane, disarm everything in the plane, and then but not wreck the plane, like nobody died. And I guess as legend went, both sides thought the other ones had technology the others didn't, which I think is possibly what started the arms race. Is they're both like, holy shit, look what they can do. We better figure out what they did. And meanwhile, it might have been neither of them. It could have been something else trying to help us, but it literally created the problem that we're facing with today, which is that they were interfering with both sides, but both sides were so ignorant to what was happening or didn't believe what was happening that they thought the other had better
What
superior
is
weapons.
truth?
Yeah.
Isn't that the question? What is truth?
Mhm. So it seems truth is coming because there's we have video now. We have people sharing their experience. We have things that can't be suppressed as quickly or easily as it could be before. So yeah, when you talk about disclosure, it seems imminent and it seems like it's just actually naturally unfolding right now. Um, yeah. So yeah, the Foo Fighters. There's a great band with a big story, but the idea is that this Foo Fighter, that's what they called them. They didn't that was the term given, at least I think on the Allies side. I may have
Mhm.
the history a little wrong, but it was that both sides thought the other one had superior tech. Oh shit, we better get superior tech. And we're talking about right now with Iran and Israel. Like if they're close to having nukes, that's a problem, right? So and
They were, according to Bibi, days away from having a nuke, a real nuclear weapon.
mhm.
And
And intended to use it. Like they were in a
they
hurry.
were, yes, they would. Their whole goal is to wipe out Israel and the United States.
Hmm. Hmm. Um,
Good versus evil.
mhm. Yeah. My question, I guess that's the astrology of it. Iran, Israel, do they look at astrology? Would they be using this as some sort of
I
energetic?
don't think so. I
No,
think so.
it's more just interesting to observe it using that that system, and the timing is certainly interesting, right? So, hmm. So,
And for all the individuals. listening to the podcast, it's not about something outside yourself. It's about what's inside yourself. And so we know we are living in times, I guess every generation has their issues. And I think the young people um, who've grown up over the last 20 years, um, especially with the COVID stuff and some of the other health stuff that's gone on, um, and the internet and the technology, it's not a simple life anymore.
Mm-mm.
And I wonder how easy it is for children to just play, innocently play, and to have a purification of consciousness with all of the noise going on around them. So it's tricky times. And I don't think, I certainly don't live by astrology. But when I look at a chart like I did for this full moon, it says wake up
Mhm.
and pay attention.
Yeah. I mean, that's going on for me personally. And even the thought of play lately, like there are so many things that I know I need to get in order, but it's just so much going on right now. I'm just focusing on self-care, and that's come down to just playing, which ultimately means creativity, which was lacking. So, yeah.
Um, Stay on top of what you need to take care of.
Yep. I can only allocate some of the day to it because it's exhausting. So, so it's quite literally I've been quite there's another person you're probably not familiar with, Rick Rubin, but he's a producer of music and stuff, and he produced a book and it's about creativity, and on the cover is just a simple dot in the middle with a circle around it, which ultimately is, I believe, how you start drawing, yeah, the astrology wheel, right? Like if I were in the center and then what, so I've been learning to carve my day up that way, like almost dividing it into pies of priority, almost like the Eisenhower important, not important, urgent. But that never really worked for me for some reason, because in my mind, so many things are important, and then I'm overwhelmed. So now I have to like carve it into there's play, there's work, there's admin, and I don't know why I'm telling you that, other than that's been prominent, and I've been making sure the pie for play is a healthy chunk because I haven't done that in a long time. So I wanted to. No, I'm gonna. No, let's talk about. We can go into a bunch of places here. Um, do you want to talk about Israel and that any longer, or you're
No, I said what I need to say.
okay? The two topics. One I only dropped on you shortly before we got started. Well, both of them I did, actually all three. But the one about ghosts, demons, angels, and how sort of people see things, as we were talking about, like the last even 50 years, World War II to now, and it occurred to me like I don't think did humans have a concept of what an alien was 90 years ago or 120 years ago until the film industry kind of possibly created it, right? So is it, generationally, do we view these things based on the generation we're in? Is that our viewpoint and our coloring? Or is it how we see God and spirit? Like I was telling you earlier, I've had a lot of people lately tell me about their alien experiences. And I realize now potentially that people have been trying to tell me my whole life. I've got that gate 13 and people tell me things even if I'm not, I don't want to hear it. It's just that it happens. But I also know that my eyes and my face give away where my brain is at. So someone will be telling me something and I'll be like 3 years down the line, like something they've told me has triggered something. My face contorts. And then they start changing their story because they see, I assume they think that I don't like what they're saying, but it's like my mind is is just in a different land for 2 seconds. Lately, I've been on top of that, aware of that. And so I hold space. I'm interested, like I'm genuinely interested, partly because I'm hearing the stories to the end now, I would say. It's probably been helpful. And because my face isn't going, what are you talking about? And then they change their tune. I get to hear the whole story. They feel better or feel heard. I get the information that I can then do my pattern analysis with. All that to say, lots of people are telling me about aliens lately. I personally don't think I've seen one in the framing I've heard it, other than the experience I think I told you about when I was like 6, and at the time it was so many other things going on. It felt like a 6-year-old mind making that up. Partly because it seemed like a cartoon and not real. But then maybe that's how. Anyways, there's a lot to unpack there. But are you familiar with that stuff? Because I think that was the gray matter stuff that Ra ran with later. But it was like I think it was based on color, which again, all that about proving stuff. But the intuitive or the it was angels, demons. I have a screenshot if you want to see it. But it's basically for the 6 colors. Each one was how people sort of perceive things. Nothing
No
to.
validity to that.
Okay.
No validity to that. But yes, there are demons. Yes, there is evil in the world. Yes, there are extraterrestrials. Yes, there are many different extraterrestrials. Some of them are good, some of them are bad.
Are some of them visible and some of them are perceived?
We have uh, ghosts. Um, we have entities from other dimensions. Like I can be in contact with Catherine de Jersey frequently. Um, she's usually over there behind me. I hear her through the right side, and she says, "You better believe it." So when I
Oh,
start talking about her, I hear her voice.
okay. So,
Is it real or is it me channeling her energy through me?
mhm.
And if she were standing there, I mean, one time, once she gave me a very extensive reading on myself, with things that I would not have known.
And this is after she passed, right? So this is coming from the
After she
ear,
passed,
not physically.
yes,
Okay.
yeah. Um, but there were a couple of times when I actually saw her, and one time very vividly.
Hmm.
Um, and what is it? I don't know. You know, my oldest sister had ghosts, and um, they followed her. She was initially freaked out by them. My nieces were freaked out by them. They were in her home and they did some things like throwing an iron across the room, playing the piano when nobody was there.
Mhm.
Um, so, yeah, other entities exist, and some of us have contact and other people don't. What's truth? I don't know.
Hmm. Hmm. To date, I don't think I've experienced an alien or a ghost. I do sort of meet people where they kind of tell me recently they kind of tell me exactly who they are. Like there was interaction 2 weeks ago at a friend's house at a party, and it's a longer conversation. I don't need to go into detail, but he basically just looked me right in the eye and said, "I'm a pervert," and and then a couple minutes later repeated it. And
That
meanwhile,
he is a pervert
yeah,
or you are?
no, he was. He said, "I'm a pervert." Like he pointed to himself, or no, he didn't point to himself, but he was basically getting me to stop talking about. I was trying to help him with his business and helping him market it, and he just straight up looked me in the face and said twice, "I'm a pervert," referring to himself. And where I was, it seemed like a place where a pervert would create a place where he could invite in things that were perverted. So um, I've had a few instances like that where someone just tells me exactly where they're at, and I don't know if that's am I psychically intuiting it, or is he gifting that information to me? Is he giving this
What
information?
difference does it make to you?
Well, at that scene, he had just finished driving a bunch of kids in his little tractor, like five of them, and I'm assuming he just gave him a tour around his property, but he drove away with five kids while their party was going on, and that was like an hour before he told me he was a pervert, like volunteered the information to me. And then so I'm left like, do I have a responsibility here to say to people, hey, that was weird? Um, or was I just overthinking and overanalyzing something because the information came in unusually?
Well, you could have said to him, what does that mean? A
Uh,
pervert like what?
yeah, well, and that's the problem is at the time that question didn't come to mind, and that was kind of the end of the conversation. Like he basically long story short, he named his business similar to another one in town, and it was so similar that he was basically complaining that like he was losing business to the other company. And so I just started talking about like you could rebrand and be a little more specific, and went into my entrepreneur mode. And then he just looked me straight in the eyes and said, "I don't want to rename my business." And I was using words to bounce around it, like I wasn't saying he should. So somehow he knew exactly what I was doing. And then he said, "The reason I have that, or I think he was implying the reason I had the name for this business is that he's a pervert. Like he liked the name because it suited him." And I was like, so maybe that's all he was telling me, but it was at a party with lots of adults drinking and children in separate rooms, and he's driving them around in a tractor, and it's all kind of weird. So, and then am I left with a responsibility to follow that instinct? No one asked me to fix it or help it, and it seems like whenever I get involved and I'm not invited, I get smacked in the.
Well, that's where the full moon comes in
Hmm.
with its uh, um, dichotomy between truth and untruth. And what responsibility do we as individuals have when we see something evil
Hmm.
or emotional reactivity that dilutes what could be true
Hmm.
and then hurts people?
Hmm.
So, where does our collective responsibility begin and end?
Hmm. Well, I guess my responsibility is next time I get that kind of information, I need to ask more questions. At the time, I was just kind of like, that was not the answer I was expecting from this guy twice.
Well, but you also um, need to be aware that there are times when if you are dealing with someone who is pervert or a narcissist or a borderline or any of the pathologies we could name diagnostically, you need to be mindful of where you put yourself or you could get into trouble.
Hmm. Yeah.
You don't just confront a pervert because they are a pervert. If he is really a pervert and you call him out, he could get violent.
Hmm. Well, and when I think about it, the scene, there was another fellow there that I've had interactions with in the past, and I know through other people telling me about what he does that he's not a good person. And he was 60 feet away from me and that interaction, and I hadn't seen him in years. So it was like, was I there in that moment to observe and start a conversation with people in the
Well, the
back?
question is if you're surrounded by negative people, is that where you want to be?
Yeah. I mean, the whole that whole scene that day was interesting because it's a group of people that it was a band. A band was playing there that I was part of at one time, and I enjoyed it. There was one fellow in particular I really enjoyed playing with. The rest were all fine. I when I was there that day, I was just kind of hanging out, helping with sound a bit, and celebrating the guy's birthday because he invited me. I was basically doing house cleaning there for the band because each one of they were clearly having a band fight and they're all upset about some stuff. And because I was once in that band, I guess they all felt comfortable sharing their 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 issues with me individually. So I basically got all four stories or five stories of the band's dynamic. And I found myself kind of giggling to myself because I was kind of like pulling like puppet strings, just lightly, not manipulating, but just being like, well, maybe you should talk to so and so because I don't know if you've got this situation right. And I found myself like nurturing these guys that are 12 years older than me, and like being like the band therapist in the background. But all this was going on while this other scene was happening too. It was just like a very, very interesting day that has just continued to unfold in a lot of different ways since then. And that wasn't during the full moon. That's like 10 days ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. But it's
It
just
was starting.
yeah. I mean, that's the other thing. I, it seems like when we as people say like, oh, the full moon, we're almost expecting like at 12:48 a.m. there's going to be something that happens. And it's clearly that that's not how it works. It's like that's the pressure point and it builds to it and then falls away from it, right?
Mhm.
So here's a question for you. With a full moon, is it 2 weeks before? Is that like, would we think of that energy as a wave like that because another one's coming? Or you don't look at it like that?
No, the moon cycle is 28 days. And so it is a regular pattern of the full moon and then the new moon and then so you're moving. And we know that women who live together cycle together.
Hmm.
So the physiology is affected by the movement of the moon.
Hmm.
Most people are oblivious. Some people don't feel it at all. Other people do feel it.
Hmm.
So it's individual.
Yeah, you've remarked a few times that someone born on or near a full moon would probably experience it a lot different than someone who
Well,
did.
Marvin was born on a full moon, and
Hmm.
he's definitely much more sensitive to the moon energies than I am.
Hmm. Is,
However, the full moon that just happened um, is one of the most powerful moons that I've experienced in my lifetime. And I don't say that lightly.
same for me. Like the last 2 weeks of well, the last few months, but the last it's just been a lot. Like too much to describe, too many stories, too many interactions. Um, and it seems that others around me all are experiencing things to a certain extent and are talking about it. So yeah, hmm, fascinating.
Hey,
Uh,
what next?
let's talk about the voices of the throat because I think this is a fun one.
Okay.
So and I only sprung it on you like 5 minutes before we started. So I know you've gone and found your own sort of diagram of it. I had seen it somewhere before where it was the idea is there's the throat, there's the gates leading out of it, and then there's kind of like the
Give
I don't
me
know if it's part.
permission to share and I'll share it.
Oh, sure. You should be able to share. Yeah.
So I had posted this as a blog post, I believe, and I assume you want me to talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, and well, and I can speak to a little bit of my experience and why I'm interested in it because there seems to be in well, I this is the other question I want to ask you. Ra always talked about, it's important to live your own experiment. And I gotta say, I do like the idea of that. Like it's my experiment. Do you like that word experiment as far as like leaning
I
into
never use it.
so how would you say to someone that this is there all these systems and tools can be tools of empowerment if you're discerning and but it's not every single person is different and unique and special and their body map would show that. Um,
Well, let's be clear when we talk about a body map.
Sorry, my dog's just arrived, so maybe chaos here
Oh,
for.
good.
Hello. Sorry, go ahead.
Um, I use noble energy maps. I use 8 body maps along with, oh, along with the integrated designs. Uh, I have not especially found um, the voices of the throat to be meaningful. Um, Other people may find them important. Um, any system that labels and tells somebody that they're this or that, I have skepticism about because I've seen it disempower people and label people and limit people.
Mhm,
Um, in most instances, well, this is the traditional human design voices. What is interesting is to notice, and I've color coded them. So, what you have, and I say it in here, is that the all of the activations in the throat center are in Taurus, Gemini, and Leo. Those are um, areas of communication that originate, if you look at Taurus, Taurus is the physical body. It's very much um, that, you look at a baby, for example.
mhm,
Now, a baby mostly communicates through the throat.
mhm,
They cry, they coo, they babble, they whine, they whimper. You could, so how do these labels get communicated non-verbally? Or is it an energy underneath the surface? Um, the 62 is a portal gate. Um, so we can read each of these and we can make sense out of them and see how they apply.
mhm.
Um, I think that most people have found themselves using all of these words at different times,
Sure.
whether they have a defined throat center or not.
Mhm.
I also laid it out this way.
Oh.
So you could see the actual hexagrams. And what I find especially useful is looking at the trigrams and the structure of the trigrams. So, for example, if you look at 16 in Gemini, it's all yin on the bottom. All of them up until 33 um, well, no, the ones with the Gemini on sign are all yin on the bottom. And then the differentiator is going to be the sign that is common to the trigram on the bottom. And then the expression of it may be what's on top.
Hmm.
But I like looking at the trigrams and the hexagrams and getting a sense for what is the flow of the energy.
Hmm.
What is the difference between I know and I will? Well, it's not in the lower trigram. So, what is the difference in the upper trigram? Then the upper trigram is a yang, a yin, and a yang. And then in I know or I can try, it's all a yin on the bottom and a yang on the top.
Hmm.
So, how do we make sense of that? And what sense does it make for you in terms of how you think about things or how you think about the words or how you do the words feel right or not?
Hmm.
Um, so I use everything, and I see there's a missing.
Oh, does it?
No, it's there. No, it needs to be there.
I think it's an image though, that it's not text. That's a screenshot, I think.
I don't think it's a screenshot, but it could be a PDF. In any case, I would recommend that instead of memorizing, you actually look at the energy.
Hmm.
And let's take I explain, I know, or I cannot explain, I do not know. What is the limitation there? There's just one yang line at the top. So you know until you don't know, or you know and you hold yourself back. What, where do we take these is the question for me. Not memorizing, but do they hold true? In all of my designs, I have the 16 and I have the 48. Do I experiment? Mm, mm, I wouldn't say I experiment.
Really?
Yeah,
I know you as someone that tries lots of new things and sees if it works.
but I don't, but you're much more of an experimenter than I am.
Oh, I'm a mad scientist. So maybe
Well, okay. So
maybe not a scientist.
which gates do you have? I'm not a mad scientist, and yet I'm a scientist.
Yeah, I don't have 23 in any world. So this is it's interesting because the earlier one that you had shared in class, and it was just like in conversation. It didn't you'd only flash it up, but yours had similar to the one that I've seen before. And the gate that is curious for me is the 35. Now on in this chart, you're saying I will experience that, or I will not experience that. And almost everywhere else I've seen it, the words were I feel. And what I kind of discovered for me at least is I have a lot of gates from the throat. And I've sort of recognized that if the energy that comes out of the gates that are active in me, if I'm speaking from truth or, experience, people hear me. But it also needs to be invited out of me. I can't just be like, hey, you should do this because I know. I don't have the 35 in any world, but I do have the receiving 36. My wife, however, has the 35. And what I realized is that Wendy's always talking about, I feel, I feel, I feel, I feel. And she seems to get what she wants. And what I realized is I have been saying I feel for the last 30 years because, hey, hello, hello. Because that's what we do around here is everyone says they feel and things seem to go. And whenever I said I felt, no one heard me. It was like that wasn't hello, that wasn't maybe natural coming from me, or it didn't resonate for people like that. But what's curious as yours doesn't even have the words I feel in it. So that's just a whole new, that's
I took the words right out of Ra's original document.
okay. So maybe he or someone else had further sort of dumbed it down after that. And from that was,
Well, Ra
again,
liked dumbing down the information to the fourth grade level.
yeah, come on, to fit it onto a baseball cap. No choice. You need a very few words to throw it on a hat and make it fit. So
Well, I think people do have choice.
I
I
agree.
know for a fact that people have choice.
Yes, I agree. For me, I always say I have the choice in how I show up. And that's for me just simple enough. But yeah,
Which
cool.
dog is that?
Most of the whining is Willow, and she doesn't normally do that, but there are people outside the door, and I think she wants to be with mom, but she's having a meeting right now, so I can mute if it's too much. But
No,
she seems happy. I think she just knows that we're separated by a door right now. Mhm. Um, yeah, maybe don't need to explore that topic any further, other than I will say in conversation with folks when we talk about it, there's something resonant. Like if someone's going to hear me, like if it's like I've got the goods for them, but I've always been trying to like feed it to them and trying to save everybody, and that's turned out not to work. So I have to be much more patient, wait to be asked. But I seem to know that there are certain
you don't need
traits
to
that
wait to be asked.
I don't
You're a
know.
manifesting generator. You need to know when to be asked.
Oh, okay. That's a good
There's
way
a
to.
difference.
Yeah, I think I've recently started to tap into that. And it a big part of it was, and you said this so many times in class and to me, you got two eyes, two ears, one mouth. And for whatever reason, my brain was always like, great, 50-50 ratio. And I was like, well, I'm clearly talking more than 50%, so I can have it. That's wrong too. I mean, that's four input devices, one output device. So
Yeah,
I'm
Sean, you're so
analytical.
um um self-conscious.
Mm,
And um we can use that word in different ways. It usually has a negative connotation, but you're so examining yourself and second guessing yourself
mm,
and trying to redesign yourself. And it's coming out of a place in you that thinks you need to do things differently.
mhm.
And you're perfect the way you are.
Yeah, I'm starting to figure that out. Like even when you described Sean that way, that feels like 10 days ago. I feel like I've come a long way. There's more to do, clearly, because I'm still doing it, but I know what you mean. So,
Well, we're all in process.
yeah.
And we're in process in a body for a reason. How do we know what that reason is? We don't. We never will. We may as well enjoy ourselves
Mhm,
and be who you are. If people don't like it, tough on them.
mhm.
Don't
Yep,
change who you are to please somebody else.
yep.
So who's the black one and who's the white one?
So Willow is the white one. You remember you did the reading on her when she was 2 months old. Uh, and
And
then,
has it proven to be true?
well, yeah, yeah. At the time you had said, she's can be loving but independent, like, and she really is. And I think I said to you at the time, every dog I've ever had wanted to cuddle and stay there. This dog comes up and is like, it's time to cuddle. And then 30 seconds later, okay, and we're done. And then she just goes. And I think had you not picked up on that from her chart, I would have probably had a different relationship with her because I would have been like, there's something wrong with this dog, right? And there's
Mm.
nothing wrong with her. This is just her nature, right? So we just give each other the space, and she seems to appreciate it too. So yeah, it was bang on. I thought she'd be more sophisticated than that as an animal, but she's or
We
not.
just got we just got for our dogs. Um, um, Let me get one. I think Sam left one in the hallway. Hold on.
I'm going to do this. I made this the other day. Let's see if it works. Hey there. I'm the first to say that when a good conversation gets interrupted and someone is just saying, hey, can you hit the like button or smash the subscribe button or whatever, uh, it drives me crazy because I will subscribe when I'm good and ready or like it when I'm good and ready. But Dr. Eleanor is right. People need to be reminded, and so I'm doing that right now. So please like, subscribe, share with your friends. Um, this lady's pretty cool, and there's a lot of great information that I'm getting every week, and you're getting too, and others could too. So share. Thanks. Okay, the commercial stopped. Now,
Okay.
what did you find? So it's you put food in it, and it basically
You
keeps them.
put a thing in it and they lick it out,
Mhm.
and it occupies them for quite a while. And then the company also has one that's long, and you put the treats in, and it has little brushes on the end, and it brushes their teeth.
Oh, that's a good idea. Hmm. And
So
hopefully made out of materials that they don't chew and get toxic, right? It's not.
I don't think it's toxic.
Yeah.
It's the company is called Woof.
And that is that food in there, or is it something that smells good and keeps them, or it doesn't matter? You just kind of put something in
It's
there.
not food, it's something you can make or something they sell. And Sam loves it.
Cool.
He actually growled at me when I came near him when he had it.
Oh, really? You like
Yeah.
he's like.
And I said to him, well, Sam, why are you growling at me? I'm the one who gave it to you.
Hmm. Um, hmm, where to go from here? I put on my list, and it's got really nothing to do with design. It's more of an observation thing, and maybe it's yeah. You remember the movie Jaws? You probably saw it. I saw it, and I think I was 8 or 9. And I saw it in my parents' bedroom, and they weren't there. That's my memory of it. So I
Oh,
don't know. I don't know if I had decided to watch it by myself and snuck it, or they knew. I don't think they knew because I don't think my parents would want me to watch that movie when I was that age, especially by myself. But it scared the living shit out of me, and for pretty much the rest of my life, I'd be in a swimming pool, and if I saw a shadow, I bolted out of the pool. Like it
oh
had that,
my.
like, right? That's not reasonable. But in my mind, the shark could come through the little filter at the bottom and somehow appear. And I'm not kidding when I say I was in my 40s still doing that. I just wouldn't tell anyone. I'd be like, oh, I gotta go to the bathroom. So, um, that movie I've learned so much about, and I think it's possibly because I was clearly traumatized by it and became like really interested in it. And one thing I learned about that movie, and since I've shared it with some other people, I've seen them kind of go like, oh, was that if you remember the opening scene of that movie, it's a couple and they're frolicking on the beach, and she strips off, jumps into the ocean, and he's so drunk he's trying to get his pants off, and he just passes out. And then next scene, she's like floating or swimming in the dark under the moonlight by herself, enjoying her swim, and asking her boyfriend to come in the water with her. And then she feels a tug on her leg, and then it's just this violent thrashing scream and screaming, and then she's dead and gone, right? And like that was even every photo kind of showed the shark coming up from underneath and grabbing the feet. So it turns out that scene, the scene was that there's scuba divers underneath, I guess, pulling her feet. She actually thought she was drowning at one point, like she had a panic attack. And that's the scene that they left in the movie because it was so authentic. once I learned that, the healing started because I realized I had witnessed someone thinking, like not acting, thinking they were going to die. And clearly it really fucked with my head, to the point that it made me like I just couldn't let go. I just realized I've known way too many things about that movie,
Mhm.
about the mechanical shark and how it went to the bottom of the lake and its name was Bruce, and like I just know things I don't need to know. um, but I think a lot of people saw that movie and had fear put into them
Yes.
by this scene, and part of me like is just like that. I'm bothered. I wonder, did she tell anyone that she thought she was drowning at the time and they chose to leave that scene in? And so, i.e., did the producer or director know that she was actually afraid for her life and still chose to leave that scene in? Because to me, that's kind of evil, and or at least not good, not helpful. Um, or was she so embarrassed by it or whatever that she didn't say anything? And because everyone was like, that scene was amazing, it was so believable, right? Like, I don't know if I'll ever know the answer to that, but I almost feel like folks need to know that they witnessed the same thing, so that because that fear of like that's a horrific way to die is being taken from underneath in the dark alone. It's like, yeah, it's pretty awful.
Like
So
what happened to Natalie Wood.
she was on a boat, right? And fell like did they ever determine what really happened
Well,
or
recently we saw a update, and it does seem like she was murdered. She was thrown overboard.
I don't want to I think was it Robert Wagner or is that the person I'm thinking of? Right.
Yeah, she
Is he
was
still
married
alive?
to him.
I feel like he maybe passed away a few years ago.
No,
He's
I
still
don't
around?
think so.
Okay. Wow. So why do you bring up that in regards to Jaws? What made you think of that?
Well, she had a lifelong fear
Oh.
of drowning and was terrified of the water. And, um, it raises the question, why, if somebody has a fear like that, would they go on a boat, you know, in the dark and even consider going out on deck
Mhm.
at night?
Doesn't
I
smell
mean,
like,
it doesn't jive,
yeah.
but yeah, I mean, a lot of people were terrified by Jaws.
Well, and it caused eradication of sharks all over the world too, right? Like it became like everyone was killing sharks and showing them as trophies. Like it literally, I know way too much about this movie, but the couple that was hired to do the shark footage because they got some spectacular real shark footage, they definitely expressed regret because they saw that this footage that was supposed to be this film and it was based on a famous book and it led to like sharks everywhere being destroyed, um, and being hung as trophies, and it's just like that's pretty demasculating even just for that species, right? So, hmm. Well, I didn't think we'd be talking about Jaws, did it? But that's where these things go. Hmm. Yeah. So does how well? Yeah. Let's talk about this. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
What?
Well, we're like earlier we were talking about like we're at a precipice right now of change, and I was listening to a podcast that's fellas from Silicon Valley, and they're talking about advanced tech and stuff. And this is from 10 days ago, but the guy commented that the movie Avatar, which I think was produced for $1 billion, I think it cost them or something, could be made today for $1,800 with computing time. And so he's basically speculating that it won't be more than a year or two before everybody will be able to afford to generate their own movie real time. Like it could be like I could be sitting there going, I want to watch a movie that's got three redheads, a dolphin named Harry, who's got a Scottish accent, and I want them to be going on a world tour and it will generate my movie for me real time. That
Mm.
that eliminates an entire industry. You know, Netflix just apparently announced a $9 billion movie production plant that's going to take 8 years to build. Well, they may not need it in 2 months, right? So, or at least they're going to be going like, holy shit, maybe we need to allocate those funds differently, right? So it's a crazy time. My son's really interested in film, and I'm worried for him because I'm trying to say to him, like, just stay being creative. But he's worried about where the next job's coming from because he's just entering the workforce. It's like a really
Well, the
crazy.
movie industry, talk about evil,
Hmm.
talk about unethical behavior. I worked in the movie industry for quite a number of years
Hmm.
with talent, and I was on sets uh, daily, watching the dailies to see if things turned out, what needed to be reshot. Um, the level of pettiness and the level of unethical treatment of each other was so obvious and so rampant that um, I would not wish the movie industry on anyone I know well.
Hmm.
That's how destructive it was to the people in the industry.
Hmm. Yeah.
And some of the top people, um, one of the writers on a show I worked on was a compulsive gambler who couldn't quite get stuff done on time because he was gambling. Um, some of them were alcoholics, some of them were borderline personalities. Um, and some of the people who were just honest, trying to do a good job, were damaged
Hmm.
by the wheeling and dealing and egos of the people doing what they did.
Well, and motivations. One thing I heard, I think last week, like I think I kind of always knew this, but an actor's career is only good for so long because of either their looks or whatever, or their age. And so the idea is that you're trying to maximize this window. So if you're on a TV show, you're trying to get to 8 seasons because that puts it into reruns, and that's where the gravy train comes. Or you got a movie career. And now we have these actors that are having their voices captured and their image captured, so they don't even have to be in the movie. They're just gonna like trademark their license, their likeness, right? It's getting nuts. The band Kiss, who should have retired 25 years ago, finally had their 10th farewell tour. But this time they seem to have done it. But now they've created a holographic version of them where you just go see Kiss live, but it's just video representation of them, but it's being generated real time. So it's like I don't like Kiss enough to give a shit to see a hologram of them, you know? So, but this is what people are paying for and putting their money towards, and makes me nuts.
Strange,
Yeah,
strangeness going on.
yeah. And it's, yeah, I talked to my dad and mom last night. I was just like, just don't watch the news, just enjoy your property, hang out for the next couple of months. Like basically echoing what you've been saying. I think you even said like September 9th is, I forget, is that the next eclipse? Because the full moon was,
Yes.
yeah. So I guess I don't understand why an eclipse has the impact it does. Um, I know it's significant. I know a full moon can be significant, but a full moon between two eclipses, I mean, is that not always what happens? Or when was the last time that that happened?
Well, this full moon was called a lunar still moon because of the angle of the Earth and the moon. So it has to do with angles, it has to do with placement, it has to do with sign. It's complex.
Hmm. Okay. So too complex to explain right now. That's good. That's cool. Um, hmm. This moon thing. I mean, it's exactly the exact shape of the sun when an eclipse forms. And I mean, again, I'm always just digging, but it seems like any other planet, their moons are jagged rocks that aren't precisely the shape of blocking something periodically. Um,
I don't know about that.
no? Hmm.
I don't know.
Hmm. Also, there's a lot of landers lately. I guess they've been trying to land on the dark side of the moon, and all of them basically within 2 minutes of when they're supposed to touch down, they lose radio communications, and then the vehicle is lost. And that's
Hmm.
now happened, I think, 3 times in the last year. So there's lots of.
Sending them up.
Uh, I think I think two of the lost ones were from China, and one was from India, I think, but I don't know that for sure. I can't remember. I know it wasn't they weren't American efforts with that one. So lots of weird stuff.
Yeah, I haven't paid much attention to that stuff.
Mm. Yeah, there's something about that whole moon landing thing, but something off about that. Um, cool. How are we doing? Yeah, we're only an hour in actually. How's your energy? You still good?
I'm fine.
Cool. So I got to talk about Jaws. That was cool. Uh, Voices of the Throat we talked about. Angels, aliens, demons, and I'm gonna want to revisit that at some point. It's something to do with like how we perceive things, and I do wonder if that's why we can't get along. It's not black or white. There's like six ways that people might view things. I don't know if it's generational. I don't know if it's astrological impact, but I still think there's something to that, and my brain is trying to find the pattern. So which I gotta maybe just relax on. It'll probably just come to me, I guess. Um, all right, are you ready to try this genetic trauma thing?
I don't know anything about it.
Okay, I'm going to tell you what I learned about it. And so when I think I told you that when I came across design, it was in a weekend where it was the very first time I'd ever done any kind of uh, drug or plant medicine. So it was MDMA on the Friday in a therapeutic, like incredible sense, and then a huge dose of mushrooms on the Saturday, and on the Sunday it was like tantric dance, one of those beds with the crystals on it, and then they asked me a question, and they were holding Chetan Parkin's book, and for whatever reason I was just like, whatever that was, I'm like it caught me like a bug, and then I spent 3 months, 4 months looking into it while learning about plant medicine because that was a whole new like it was just all everything was new. It broke me open. And I kept wanting to move away from design. Something didn't resonate. Every time I saw Raw, I just thought, oh my God, I'm joining Scientology. I'm joining a cult. This doesn't feel right. Right? It was just off. I later said to Jonah, like it it was like listening to a grumpy lighthouse keeper. Like the way he just wore black and he was just this, cranky guy in a tower that's just like that was the visual I always had. And I think I was ready to abandon it. But I ended up, for some reason, figuring out that there was this idea of a Chiron return. And that I tracked the date down to within like 2 weeks of when I went and had this experience. And so then I went looking for Chiron return stuff. And Lavina Archers of Jovian or whatever um, had an offering for a Chiron return reading. And it was really eye-opening. I didn't actually get to talk to her. She pre-recorded it, and I think I had to wait a week for it. And then I got this thing. And she talked about Chiron, this centaur, half man, half horse, and he's pulling a poison arrow out of his hip. And I was like, man, I've always had hip issues. I can't sit cross-legged. Like it's like I was connecting all these dots of like, this is for me. And I'm grateful for it because it opened up all sorts of stuff for me. I don't think I would have found you had I not had that access to that information. So I kept digging, and the Chiron thing and the astrology didn't make sense to me, and I still struggle with it, but absolutely want to know more. But there was something about the trauma part of it, and it then led me to a Russian website that talked about this thing called genetic trauma. Now, I don't know if it's sourced from Ra or just from the Black Book and someone intuited it, or what it was, but um, it just resonated so much. And it basically broke down six traumas. So one of them was shame, and that was mine. That was what it, and you talk about labels and stuff. So I labeled myself with, yeah, it's shame. I got it figured out. So like I did
What
all
are
that.
the others?
I actually took a screenshot. I might be able to share it here. Let me dig it out. Documents. How do you load a picture on the screen?
It sounds like developmental psychology.
Yeah, you'll tell me in a second here once I can figure out how to share an image. I know what I could do. Hold, please. Oh, I know what I can do. I can just show you in Neutrino Design, which is the human design map that my friend Nathan works on. So
Is it an abomination of a body graph?
I
If
won't
so,
show you.
don't show it to me.
I promise I won't show a body graph. I'll just show a screenshot of some text.
Okay.
I promise. 19, oh, that's this one. There it is. Okay. Let's see if that's working.
Oh, let's get rid of this. Is that a screenshot that you took of my thing?
I took a screenshot just because. Um, so basically,
These are developmental stages.
okay. So how did that's the question I've got, and a couple of things I want to talk about. For one, there seems to be something to this. So it was the design Mars line, and so mine was .3 shame, and then I just sat with it for weeks, days, did my process. And I was telling you before we started here today that then I got curious about, oh, someone else's. Oh, sorry, and there's a piece missing here. At the time, I was just using this Russian website. Like it was a page, a link I can send you later if you're curious. Um, and it didn't exist in any apps. There was no talk of it anywhere. And at the time, I was talking to my friend Amanda Horvath, who you've met, and this is probably 3.5 years ago. 3 years ago, and I said, like, are you familiar with this genetic trauma thing? And her mentor is Barbara Ditlow. And I don't know if you've ever met Barbara, but she's been in design for 30 years, neat lady. She had said to Amanda she hadn't heard of it, but encouraged through Amanda that I continue to at least investigate for myself. And so I kept doing that. And so my mother, when I started looking at other charts, my mother had the trauma of rejection. And even at the time, I was like, I don't know, maybe. But what happened, and I know I've already just told you this an hour ago, but I'll tell it for the viewers. Um, the next time I saw my mom, I would hug her like I always do. And I realized energetically, as soon as I hugged her, I'd get like, okay, we're good, push and pushed away. And then I realized that she had done that my whole life. Like it was like, oh, that always happened, but I never picked up on it, or I picked up on it early, and then just it was this energetic memory or something. So because I was thinking, well, I don't want to be rejected, I just held on to her, and she started squirming and seemed really uncomfortable. And then like 15, 20 seconds later, she kind of just melted and relaxed. And ever since then, when we hug, she holds on longer. And everyone that I run into where we're present, for some reason, she feels the need to share that I'm the best hugger. And that was just like it was an energetic shift that just happened through awareness of this. Now, I suppose if it was guilt, um, I don't know what I would have done as an experiment. I will tell you that Wendy, Samantha, and Evan all have guilt as their trauma. And even when even when I was up island with this shamanic couple that introduced me to plant medicine and design briefly, and then Wendy went there and Sam went there. The one lady there remarked that, like, man, there's some issue with the dishwasher in your home because you all talk about the dishwasher. And I came to realize is that the energy of three people in my house guilty me into thinking that I don't contribute to emptying the dishwasher when like I don't even use dishes and I'm emptying the dishwasher all the time and being told that I don't contribute to the family emptying the dishwasher. I'm like, wow, they're in cahoots. They've merged their guilt and then it's like this overpowering energy over me. I can't let go that there is something energetically to that. So that's the end of me talking about this. But you said this came from like you said something about psych. Oh, sorry, I'll keep that up if you want me to.
Um,
Because then it gave information on suggested healing and what it means, and it all kind of resonated. And sorry, I'll just say I've been experimenting in conversation with people when I see this, and usually when I explain this, there's like a light bulb moment that goes off for people. So I don't know if it's just they're looking for something to spawn, be the first nugget of healing in some direction. I don't know if I'm interfering with things, but I do know that this seems to resonate, and people seem to like that you can identify it on something. So again, it's a label, but it's a possibly a useful label-ish.
it's very similar to Freudian and Erikson stages of development.
Mm.
Um, goes the other way, probably, where the sixth line would be the earliest. At about 8 months of age, there's separation anxiety.
Mm. Okay.
Um, and the others, whatever sequence you want to say them, are stages. Children go through stages.
So kind of like this five stages of grief, but this is the five stages of energetic
Well,
limits.
the brain is not, I think you could stop the sharing.
Sure.
Um,
That's not what I want to do.
children go through, we all go through developmental stages, and those stages continue through the lifespan. They don't end when a child is 5 years old or 10 years old or whatever.
Mm.
So I think it's a stretch to identify a line based on the hexagrams with a developmental stage in a person.
Mm.
I think if we actually did a study, it would not correlate because there are many other factors that might correlate. It can work for you. It did. Um, but my guess is it's more the conceptualization
Mm.
that you had of feeling an opening to shift something within yourself.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
you found the opening that resonated with what it was the word was telling you to clear.
Mm.
But in Erickson's stages and in developmental psych, you look for developmental sequences. And between 0 and 7, um, we can make a case for developmental sequences in lots of different ways.
Mm.
Um, guilt and shame usually occurs between the age of 2 and 4. And it's when a child begins to move out of the nonverbal stage and their mind begins to awaken in a certain way. And they want some independence. They want to test limits. They want to be their own person.
Mm.
And to the degree that a parent stops them, oh no, don't do that. What are you doing that for? What do you mean by that? Tell me what you want. All of those. depending on the tone of voice, depending on the way it's given, can activate shame in a
Mhm.
child.
For sure.
What child can get away without feeling at some level suppressed,
Hmm.
repressed, diverted from who they are? It's part of being human.
Hmm.
We cannot just be, I mean, look, you socialized your dogs, for God's sake. Domesticated animals are not living their true nature.
Hmm.
They're living having been socialized and knowing, your dog is going to have very different parameters than my dogs have.
Hmm.
My parameters are different than Marvin's parameters for the dogs. I mean, he's much less disciplined than I am. Um, I'm very consistent with my animals. He's not consistent. He is consistent, but very loosely.
Loosely consistent.
Well, he is consistent, but he doesn't. I mean, when he was walking Mac early on, his viewpoint was, well, Mac needs to smell and go poop before he can go on a walk. So he trained Mac to be ADD. Mac will do his own thing until he wants to comply. Um, one's not wrong, one's not right, but the developmental programming is part of the socialization process.
Hmm.
And it's part of the developmental sequencing. I don't think we can say it's predetermined by a line in a hexagram or a degree of a planet. I've
Yeah.
seen too much that does not track.
Well, and the one thing that's come to mind is when you saw that list and you kind of commented that it's the inverse, shame and rejection were right in the middle. So they're very
Right.
close to each other, right? So it
Mhm.
occurred to me like, here I'm blaming my mom for rejecting me, but was I doing the same thing and we are just doing it to each other, right?
You
So
could have been rejecting her.
like I'm sure I was because I either she taught it to me as my caretaker or I energetically picked it up. But then of course I would have embodied it, I suppose, right? As like that's what we do around these parts.
Well, but you could also look at it not as a negative,
Hmm.
not as a trauma,
Hmm.
but you're an independent person. You wanted your independence.
Hmm.
You didn't want to be coddled. You didn't want to be hugged and stopped from exploring what you wanted to explore. And where is the exploration in that Mars?
Hmm.
You definitely are a seeker. You certainly are inquisitive, and you certainly do not like to be limited.
No. The funny thing is, I don't remember that from childhood. And I don't, we talked about this before, but I don't remember much of anything somehow. And I realize lately, Wendy and Kat that works here are kind of always calling me on things I don't remember, but it's in the moment, I can't remember people's names because it wasn't important about
Hold
what was
on a
going on.
second. Hold on a second.
Mhm.
Missiles are being intercepted over Tel Aviv now,
Mm.
as we speak. 2:11, yeah, about
Wow.
15 minutes ago. I just got an alert from my daughter that Noah and Shavit went into a safe room, the
No.
shelter, because there are missiles over Tel Aviv.
Hmm. What a time. Um, hmm. I'm reminded of my grandmother. We've talked about her a bit. Um, she was in London during the bombings in World War II. And when I went back to the UK with my family 2.5 years ago, I actually went to the building that she had described. And it was now a hotel, and it was closed for some reason. And so I just didn't go inside at that point. I kind of wish I just finished the job and went in and looked around. Um, but she described this building. I don't know why I'm telling you this. I'm not trying to actually scare you either. But there had been a bombing the night before. She went to work. She was an accountant, and she had to like step over bodies that were covered in newspaper on the street to just get in the door of the building. And then the building had been partly demolished, and she was basically re-transcribing records that were damaged by water and fire. Or not, no, not by fire. Anything that was wet and still readable, they were trying to like rewrite the information down. That had to have been one hell of a traumatic experience for my grandmother that I suspect. And I have like videos of when I interviewed her before she passed, and she would talk about those times and how nobody could afford stockings. And so they would use a black pencil to draw lines on the back of their legs to pretend that they were wearing stockings, right?
Mm,
That her purse was not a purse, it was her gas mask box. So all the
mm,
women were walking around with gas mask boxes because they were supposed to, but inside there was no gas mask. Like they were all like, fuck it. If like this is not going to help anyways. I think they knew it probably wasn't going to help. Just when you hear the sirens, go and sit and be afraid, which is an awful feeling, right?
mhm.
Um, yeah. So that energy, and then it's even with my mother, she would talk about how um like just being able to get a fresh egg. Like there was 6 years where she didn't taste an egg, and so by the time she had an egg, it was like the most amazing experience of her life, right? And so even today, she just hoards paper. Like her house is full of stacks of paper and notebooks, and anytime there's a blank page in something, I'm pretty sure she pulls it out and puts it away just in case she needs it. Like and I wonder if that's just even from grandmother being like, all this paper is destroyed. Like, did she just carry that as like an energy, right? And it just kind of, anyways, it's remarkable. Like all these instances have a knockdown effect later. There's an impact later, and it just keeps cycling. It's frustrating. So also, I was going to say earlier, like, hey, lady, you were talking about Marvin being inconsistent. And then didn't Osho label you as divinely inconsistent? Wasn't that the name he gave you
Yes, Osho's gave me a name, Divine Inconsistency.
for
And
divine?
he told me I'm perfectly consistent, but most people don't understand the level at which I'm consistent.
Oh, okay. I've not heard you describe it that way before. When you described it before, that didn't land as well. So good job. That's better. Thank you.
It's true. I do not, well, as I'm proofing things like my books, I see where I might do one thing one place and something a little bit different a different place. And there's a reason for it. So, whereas somebody may see it and say this is inconsistent, there's a logic behind it
Mhm.
that, for example, in a lot of my documents, I capitalize words that you might not otherwise capitalize. And I do that um, because I see the connection between them.
Mhm.
And I want other people to get the unconscious imprint of what it is I'm perceiving. But for many people, they may not know that.
Hmm. Have you explored have you explored graphology, like the study of handwriting analysis?
I did many years ago,
Did you? Because there's something about words and how they're spelled. So I
but
went to.
I'm also extremely, I practiced my handwriting
Mhm.
very, very diligently for many years because I saw a handwriting I thought was very beautiful
Hmm.
and I wanted to duplicate it.
Mm.
So when I write, even if I look at my notes sitting on my desk, um, I always use a pen or a number one pencil. Um, and every page on my desk, my handwriting looks like a piece of art.
Mm.
I take the time when I write to be in the writing of it. And it's an art form for me.
Interesting. So there were some folks here last night delivering an event on uncertainty in the marketplace. And so I was there because I was going to help them with the tech and I hung out. And at the end of the day, the three people that presented, it was like those three people are exactly who I needed 7 years ago, but that business is gone. That energy's gone. So it was just like, man, where were you? So it was like quite the conversation. But they gave everybody a pencil, but like one that I have to like sharpen with a knife. And and she seemed insistent that I should take one. So it's sitting here and I haven't sharpened it yet. But I mean, I've been journaling a little more lately. My journaling so far, agonizing handwriting is terrible because I think most doctors would be like, damn, that's some really messy handwriting. So,
Well,
and
you
they're
should see
normally,
Marvin's handwriting.
oh, I'm guessing because it seems like most doctors, it's like,
We had one incident where he wrote down a shopping list
mhm,
and he gave it to me in the morning and he said, "This is what we need." And I couldn't read it. And I said, "Marvin, what word is this?"
mhm.
And he couldn't read it.
Oh, okay, that's a problem.
And three or four of us were trying to figure out what word he had written.
Mhm.
If
Funny.
it was the word carrot,
So
it
why?
didn't look anything like it.
So that like without a doubt, that is a pattern. A lot of doctors have awful, awful handwriting. Why? Why is that acceptable? Because you're dealing with people's health, and like they probably should make sure that they're spelling things right, so someone doesn't get cyanide instead of Advil, you know. Um, but why do you think that's a thing? Are they in a hurry, and are they taught to make it
No,
difficult
in
to read?
Marvin's case, he was left-handed and he was taught to write with his right hand.
Okay, so mhm,
Hmm.
that's interesting. But like it's without a doubt, because as a computer consultant, I've helped many, many doctors' offices with little jobs. And so I'm always a fly on the wall hearing stuff. And I would listen to the nurses and the other admins people, and they would always be looking at the doctor's notes, and some of them got really good at deciphering it. It was like the Enigma code from World War II. Like that this is that level of that was what they were talking about. I don't understand why that's such a big pattern. Because Marvin, that makes sense. He's writing with the opposite hand. Probably doesn't even like writing. I can, for me, it's never been a thing, but it's starting to become something I'm paying attention to. Thank you. Um, but like, is it lack of care with other doctors? Are they in a hurry and they're not taking time to truly assess and they're just
I
like,
have
I
no
got to
idea.
wait. Mm. It's okay. So this popped to mind. I'm going to share this, and I'll be curious to your thoughts of this as well. I have read or I recall seeing many times that there's this the stat was that doctors tend to prescribe things that addicts want in the afternoon. And the notion is that doctors come into work every day going, I went to medical school, I care about people, I want to do good for my patients. And then after the 10th patient that morning that says, my shoulder still hurts, you need to help me. And the doctor says, did you do the exercise I gave you? And they go, not really. And I've definitely been that guy that did that kind of stuff. And then the doctor goes, well, okay, prescribe. It seems like addicts in general know that in the afternoon the doctors have reached a point of threshold, and it's like way easier to get your stuff in the afternoon. And it seems to be quite the statistic and pattern that exists. But I wonder, have you heard that before? Have you seen that before? Is anyone
I
looking?
know here that it's very well controlled. And um,
Release of medicines, you mean? Like they have to.
the controlled substances, you have to have a special license, and it's monitored. And the pharmacists call if it's too frequent.
Mhm,
And um, I know that um, Marvin had quite a few cases where a person was asking for certain drugs too frequently and he wouldn't prescribe them.
mhm. Oh yeah, no, I'm not. I'm not at all. I know Marvin. I know
So, I
he's
mean,
not one of those doctors.
I think it depends on the doctor
Yeah.
and how they get around it.
Well,
And I don't know if the laws are different in Canada than they are here.
and part of it to me is like, how many of them wanted to be a doctor? How many of them were encouraged by someone to become a doctor and they became the family's pride and joy, and now they have this massive student loan and
But
promotion?
I think for doctors, most of them love what they do.
I hope so. Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine going through the kind of intense training that they go through if they don't feel committed to it. I've seen the training firsthand,
Hmm.
and it's brutal. Getting up in the middle of the night to be on call, uh, having to sleep on a god-awful cot in a closet while you're waiting for the next patient to need you.
Hmm.
Um, Not easy hours, not easy. I mean, even with my daughter and my Noah's wife, Shavit, who's in Israel being trained as a doctor. And it's brutal.
Hmm.
The hours, the intensity, the exams, the level at which you have to know what you know.
Hmm.
It's pretty intense.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I don't mean to dismiss the energy or the effort or the love the doctor's putting in. At least what I witness in Canada being in the back office all the time is there's so much worry about paying the bills and the rent and the lease and the air conditioning and the staff, and they don't really have time to be doctors, right? Because they've started their own practice and they're in debt. And it ultimately the energy goes to shit. Now, that's, I'd say, rampant in Canada. The other frustration, I was talking to someone yesterday about this. Like, I met this amazing doctor, this woman in Toronto at this hypnosis event, which I need to talk about that in a minute. I really do. But at the base of the hotel where this hypnosis event was a little nail salon, but they had massage and reflexology. And I was there and I was like, I'd like to try this reflexology thing. So this woman, it was an incredible experience. I ended up going 4 more times that week. I learned that she was a doctor in India, but in Canada, not recognized.
Mhm.
So she has to play with people's feet in a in a nail salon at the base of a elevator shaft in a nondescript hotel that's off in the business sector. Like, it's not even in prominent Toronto. And so her skills weren't wasted because she gave me some amazing things. But Canada doesn't recognize her ability to be a doctor. And yet we're short of doctors, and we're importing doctors from the UK and paying them 1.5 times what people here get paid, which creates dissension. Like, it's a shit show here. And I'm frustrated as a Canadian uh, that we keep bragging about our health system because it's a pile of garbage and we're arrogant about it. I'm actually frustrated Canada's won't even, like, apparently we've decided as a country that we're going to get rid of daylight savings times once the US does. Like, we can't just go, this is dumb, let's stop doing this. We're waiting for the Americans to do it. Like, talk about being a bystander with just time and yeah. Anyways, very frustrated little Canadian here right now. And I want to burn it all down. So
Careful what you say on YouTube.
Yeah, no. When I say that, I'm just much as I know lots of people are hurting, and I've had my hurt. I what's going on right now kind of needs to happen. I just hope everyone's okay. Or, but yeah. Yeah, YouTube. Oh, so back to graphology. So I go to this hypnosis course, and it was profound, and I think I've told you about some of the things that happened there. But I went back a second time because Mike Mandel, the main hypnotist instructor guy, who worked with the Ontario Provincial Police for 30 years and has all sorts of stories, they're fascinating. But because I went back to do the second level of training, I forget what they called it, but we got a free 5 minute handwriting analysis from him. And so what he said is, there were six of us, and he said, "I want you to write down on a piece of paper what you'd like to accomplish in the next 5 months or something. It needs to be on paper that's not lined. I want you to date it. I want you to sign it, and I want you to draw a line underneath your signature of like intention." And he started explaining like all the various meanings from these things. And the line underneath was like, yeah, it was like a confidence line. And he also talked about like various signatures that were like tells for suicide. Like there's one called the Ernest Hemingway, which I guess is if you sign your name and then you run a line through your own name,
Mm.
that generally means the person, if they had a gun, they might use it. And much as that's words or spells and I'm making sure not to plant any ideas here. There's information in handwriting. And so he would talk about like O's. If there was a break in the O, it usually meant that the person was more sexually explorative, I think was the word he used. They're more open to, right? And you could see that. When he did mine first, and he came up to me and he was so excited by mine. And it's because there was a word, and I can't remember if it was asking or it was a word like that, but it had a K in it. But the K was uppercase. So my handwriting's already atrocious, but it was like a, small s, massive K, ing. I don't recall thinking about that, doing that. He came up and he's like, "That's the anarchist K," that's like it's a real time. And then he pulls down his shirt and he's got like an anarchy tattoo on his chest, and he was just so excited to tell me this. And I didn't realize that I like had that right there in my handwriting. Why am I telling you this? We were talking about handwriting earlier and doctors and intention. And yeah, I'm starting to realize like maybe my handwriting being so incredibly sloppy is how I'm approaching other things. And so I need to dial that in. So I might go and chop the ends off that pencil and go at it again
Is
with
it
my.
a square pencil?
Yeah, it's one of these like because they're in the construction industry, it's like a carpenter's pencil. So it's not, I don't think this is really truly meant for me to do a lot with because it would be massive. But I think I'm going to purposely go and explore it just from the tactile experience or kinesthetic experience. So, hmm. Yeah, so handwriting. It's interesting.
Handwriting is extremely interesting.
Mhm. Do we need to explore that anymore?
No,
Okay. Well, we've actually clocked in.
I think we can wind down.
Okay.
I think my pool might be, oh yeah, my pool is warm enough for me to swim today.
Well, then you should do that.
And it's not raining, finally.
Yeah, I'm hoping the sun will be out tomorrow. It's been great here the last few days.
If the pool cover is free of water, I will definitely go swim.
Good. All right, I'm gonna hit a little button here to close this off.